Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Lokashankaram Sadasiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. I think we are getting deeper and deeper into the problems we are discussing. On the one hand, we have Nyaya, which is a precision, remarkable precision. Though difficult to master the vocabulary, one has to, if one is keen on developing that kind of a precision. On the other hand, we have also the Advaita tradition, the Advaita texts, covering both epistemology and metaphysics, and the concepts are apparently easy, but sometimes it's difficult, because sometimes we take for granted. But this taking for granted is always a problem. And as I said earlier here or elsewhere, we will not have such a kind of an atmosphere to talk about the subject or to listen to your questions and this is such an atmosphere. Sometimes I take for granted certain things are easy, then realize that perhaps I have to do that one. But remember that what we do sometimes in one semester, if not in 1 year, we try to bring out here. That is rather difficult. Difficult for us and difficult for you. Knowing what we are expected to do, we do. I am speaking for all of us, all the faculty members. But if you think that sometimes we have taken for granted certain things, it's for you to stop us. And we are available here in the classroom, outside the classroom, we don't go out. We are here. Now first I will answer your question, Drishti Srishti Vada, because then I will get into some problems with regard to consciousness, etc. We have two theories in Advaita. One is what is known as Drishti Srishti Vada, you refer to. Drishti Srishti Vada. Drishti Srishti Vada. Drishti Srishti Vada. The other is known as Srishti Drishti Vada. Srishti Drishti Vada. Correspondingly also we have Eka Jiva Vada and Aneka Jiva Vada. Eka Jiva Vada. Eka Jiva Vada. Aneka Jiva Vada. Eka, Aneka. One Jiva theory, many Jiva theory. Eka Jiva Vada, Aneka Jiva Vada. I don't think that even though this is These are the two, I am starting with these two. I'll come to that one. Even though we talk about Eka Jiva Vada, one Jiva theory, I don't think, from my acquaintance with Acharya's Bhashyas and other writings, that Acharya very vehemently advocates this theory called Eka Jiva Vada, one Jiva theory. That's why I repeatedly say our grounding in Advaita should be in Adhyasa Bhashya. Either one understands Adhyasa Bhashya and then one can understand Advaita. If one does not understand Adhyasa Bhashya, teaching of Advaita any number of times will not be of any use. Will not be any use in the sense that the person will be having repeated doubts about some problem or that. Having doubts is welcome, but not understanding the basic issues, if one goes on raising objections, they will say that why don't you be sure about the foundations? And the best foundation for understanding Advaita is Adhyasa Bhashya. That is a test. That is what my teacher used to say, that what I also repeatedly say whenever I have an occasion. Supposing I say that there is only one Jiva, what will happen to all of you? I am the only Jiva. All of you do not exist excepting me. It's an extreme position. Eka Jiva Vada. Then Acharya need not have started with Yushmat, Asmat, Parche, Yushmat and Asmat, you and I. So we proceed with our philosophy on the supposition that there is a plurality of jivas, Aneka Jiva Vada. That's why we have problem. We have intersubjectivity, we have got problems. I agree with you, I disagree with you. The same thing, you agree or disagree. Not one Jiva. Leave alone the human beings. What about the entire creation? Probably the very highest evolved Jiva in the state of perfection may think. I don't think so even then. The purpose of the Jivan Mukta is to teach us by his example. The Jivan Mukta has played an important role in our life in society. We require them. And the Jivan Mukta addresses all of us. And therefore, Eka Jiva Vada, I don't think that it is part of philosophy. We are all doing philosophy. Acharyas have written Bhashyas for our purpose, not for one purpose, for one person. Assuming that there is a plurality of jivas, we have what is known as Aneka Jiva Vada. That's number one. Then Drishti Srishti Vada. That is to say, Drishti is seeing. I translate as seeing. Srishti is creation. Seeing itself is creation. As I see, I create. I don't think so. When I see what is already in existence, I see. The plant in front of me outside the building is existent. It's already there. What is already there, I see. It is already created. Already created. It is an object already created. It is a vastu which is there already. Srishti is there already. I am not responsible for the tree. Even if I have sown a seed and a tree has come out, I am not responsible for the sea. I am not the creator of the sea. I know my limitations. So there is such a thing called Srishti, objects created through Srishti, and what is already there I see. The only claim that I can say that I am really the Srishtikarta is with regard to my subjective states, my dukkha, my sukha and all that one. That is why I told you earlier in the class on one occasion, we talk about Ishvara Srishti and Jiva Srishti. Vidyaranya Swami. There is such a thing called Ishvara Srishti, the world external to us. But what is my creation? I have contributed to my pleasure and pain and other subjective states. I have created. I am responsible, not the Lord. But being weak, when we go to the temple, we accuse the Lord. Appadi pannutiye, appadi pannutiye, unakku karunaye illiye. He receives our charges. He is not responsible. Now, there are two theories. Which do you think is really acceptable? I would say Srishti Drishti Vada. Things which are created by the Lord, they are there. We have to make use of them properly. We see them, we enjoy them, we make use of them for our own benefit, for the benefit of others. Srishti Drishti Vada means even as you see, you create. That is the distinction. Would you subscribe to this or this, James? I'm undecided. Huh? I'm undecided. You don't know? You've not decided. Think about the problem. Think about the problem. Sometimes in classical texts, probably in Jivanmukti Viveka, there is reference to, there are many things which Vidyaranya Swamigal talks about. And as I said, still I hold that view. Sometimes for the exposition, there may be some kind of a deviation, not opposed to Advaita, no, not at all. Sometimes it may be helpful to the practitioners, spiritual aspirants. It all depends, because there are spiritual aspirants of different categories. Not all are the same type. Then, I get into another problem raised by Swamiji. Oh. Repeat, please.
As we see, we create, and different people see differently, and so hence different creations. There will be multiple srishtis as per the multiple jivas.
That is not in that sense. Yes, you can. I can imagine so many things. It doesn't mean that they are there. I can imagine. I can imagine that there is no tree. But it doesn't mean that there is no tree. I can imagine that nobody is here in the class. Is it my right drishti? No, it's not a right drishti. Supposing I imagine, does it mean that there are no persons here? Yeah. I can't just close my eyes and say, even with saying I am not seeing anybody. I don't think so. Even if I have evolved into a higher state, I don't think that I will say that nobody exists here. Even a Jivan Mukta would say, yes, all of you are here. That's why he plays the role of a teacher. I am fond of quoting this statement, a Jivan Mukta, sarvam anumodati, sarvam nishedati. He approves of everything which was done in the right way. He disapproves of everything done in the wrong way. Approval and disapproval is only for the purpose of helping us. encouraging us. We need such a person. So it is not that I can imagine several things. It's pure imagination. It's not the reality. The reality is Srishti Drishtivada. Things are there, already there. Even before I am born, they are there. The mountains and the oceans and all of them. I am not in a hurry, because even if a few ideas that we have to be very careful about the ideas. That's why I would like to emphasize what I said in the morning. I have it in the writing, in the supplement to my synopsis I have given, in the discussion between the modern philosopher and Adi Shankara. At a particular place in the dialogue, I have made a reference to this important point. Now I just to draw your attention to in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 4th chapter, 3rd section, where you have got which is called popularly as Jyoti Brahmana. It's a very important dialogue between Yajnavalkya and Janaka. The issues that we discussed, we explained, all of them, they are there. In the 4th chapter, 3rd section, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Shankara's Bhashya. Janaka wants to raise a question. What is it? How is it we know? Something like that one. I don't have the text to read, but I give you the bare summary. How is it that we transact our business of life? We require light. During the daytime, that is the sunlight. During the night, if it is a time when the moon is shining, yes, we can also transact business through the light provided by the moon. Though the light which moon has got might have been the borrowed light from sun. That is another issue. It gives us light. We are able to manage to walk and all that one. Particularly if it is Purnami, it's a clear light. Oh yes, we can move. In Madras city, usually, during the time they lay the road in the night. They lay the road in the night. They will choose that particular period. Don't require special light. Supposing it is pitch darkness in the night, the stars also may help us. They provide some light. Supposing you are walking along a thick forest area, and then with your friends you are going, and then you have lost the track. You are in one place and another place. Where are you, Balu? I can shout. Somebody here responds, I'm here and there. The voice may also help us. Fire may help us. Nothing is available. What do you do? There you have got the real problem. Yajnavalkya goes on answering the question. Finally, he says, if you look at the composition of the human being, we have the senses, we have the mind, we have the self. The most important parts I mentioned. Body, no doubt, is there. The senses is a cognitive instrument. The mind, again, is a cognitive instrument. Finally, we have the self. The self is called a consciousness. The mind, and the Acharya goes on telling, the self by its very nature, the self, otherwise called consciousness, otherwise called chit, otherwise called chaitanya. You can use any word you like. the cognition that we have, when I see the table, I have the cognition of the table. When I see the plant, I have the cognition of the plant. That is called vritti jnana. Through the mental vritti, through the antakarana vritti, I am able to get the cognition of these objects. So we call it as vritti jnana. That's clear. We require vritti jnana to transact our business of life. Supposing I say somebody bring the book, well, he must be able to see the book, and then he has the vritti jnana, the cognition of the book I wanted, he goes and brings the book. That is how we transact our business. The mind plays an important part. The mind is material, as I told you, accepting consciousness, everything is material, I told you, the morning. Here, dichotomy between consciousness and things other than consciousness. Self and other than self, not self. It's a clear dichotomy. So it is consciousness which is called, if this is called vritti jnana, this is called sometimes swarupa jnana, swarupa chaitanya. The self is swarupa chaitanya, swarupa jnana. Should not be confused with vritti jnana, the modal cognition, the cognition attained through the antakarana vritti, the modes of the antakarana, the modifications of the antakarana. Mode is a modification, MODE. I am using several words in order to convey one important idea. The changes that take place in the antakarana, they are called vrittis, modifications, modes, MODES. Therefore, this may be called vritti jnana. Sometimes in English they call it modal cognition, MODAL. It is that one consciousness. I read this simple text which I taught here before last. It is under translation, it will be ready soon. When? I don't know, but as soon as possible. Drik padartha chaitanyam, because in the morning I refer to Drik and Drisya, Ramaraya Kavi. Drik padartha chaitanyam chaturvidam. Pramatru, Pramana, Prameya, Pramiti Vedat. And beautiful. He tries to imitate the language of Tarka Sangraha. Clear definitions. We speak of Pramatru Chaitanya, Pramana Chaitanya, Prameya Chaitanya, Pramiti Chaitanya. One Drik, because the morning I refer to Drik, this distinction. One Drik, the seer. That is Swarupa Chaitanya. It is for the purpose of epistemological analysis spoken of in 4 different ways. So there is such a thing called consciousness, Chit Chaitanya. Now, it is this self or consciousness that throws its light on the mind, first of all. It is the mind that is closest to the self. But still we are not able to locate the mind, much less the location of the self, excepting to say that yes, there is this self in us. How is it referred to? I use the Western expression. This self is referred to as transcendental a priori, as transcendental. Kant used that expression, Immanuel Kant. Phenomenological tradition uses that expression. We use that expression. The only thing is, it is in English. And here, if you read this text, 4th chapter, Pragadaramika Bhashya, you will find that how he is able to convey the idea. This self throws its light first on the mind, because it is removed from the self by 1 degree. as close to the self as possible. Therefore, the self is able to illumine the mind, otherwise it is material. A material entity, this morning I said, is of no use for you to know anything, because it is material. This table cannot help me to know anything because it is material. It's a jadavastu. But when it is illumined, it becomes a cognitive instrument. Then, after the mind, we have got the sense organs. Sense organs are also like the mind, material, of no use. But we say that the sense organs are the cognitive instruments. Where from do they get the light? They get the light from the mind. Mind itself has borrowed the light from consciousness. And then we have the body. The body is very sensitive now. A material entity will not have any sensation. It will not be sensitive to anything because it is jada. Same reason, jadatvat. But if it is sensitive, if it is animated, if it can perform actions, if it can react and all that one, it is because it has also been animated and sensitive by the light originally borrowed from the self or consciousness. Where from does it get the light? Sense, consciousness or self. It is the ultimate principle. There is nothing else from which it can borrow the light. It provides light for everything. So it is self-luminous, swaprakasa. We speak of swaprakasa chaitanya. Swaprakasa chaitanya. And it is this which goes on illuminating everything. Can it be known by anything? No. Because it is self-luminous. There is nothing which can reveal it. Because everything other than it is material. That's why in the beginning itself Shankara draws the dichotomy between the self and the not self. Now this self is called, it is prior to all of our experience, prior to, earlier than. Every experience is made possible by the consciousness. Given the consciousness, everything is possible. In the absence of consciousness, nothing is possible. Therefore, we say this is a priori. Prior to everything, prior to experience. It is not something based upon experience, something arising from experience. It is prior to experience, prior to any kind of anubhava a jiva can claim. Am I clear? That is the word. Supposing it is dependent upon experience, another word has been used, a posteriori, posterior, later, prior, earlier, same thing, that is the original basis, a posteriori. After experience, based upon experience. Now this consciousness is called by Kant, by the phenomenologists, it is not a part, it is not an empirical entity. It is not an empirical entity. The objects of the world such as the table, the chair, the mountain, the building, all of them are empirical entities. Vyavaharika vastu. This is not a Vyavaharika vastu, though it is involved in the Vyavaharika life. It is involved. How is it is involved? Through Maya. When it is involved at the human level, in addition to this self, it is everywhere in the body. That's why it is called a Purusha. So what is the etymological meaning of the word self? So Purusha, Purnatvad, is pervasive throughout the body. And therefore don't ask for the location of the self or consciousness. Similarly, we don't know the location of the mind. I had been recently to a seminar in Bombay about the problem about the mind, brain and consciousness. Quite a few medical scientists, physicists, they came to that conference. And we were concerned with this problem, mind, brain, mind and consciousness. They talked so much eloquently about the brain and the mind to the extent they can. Consciousness, there were difficulties. Now this consciousness is said to be involved in everything that we do as a human being. It is involved in. We don't know anything about outside the world. I know about my own world as a human being. Therefore, it is what is presupposed in everything I do. Just as the foundation is presupposed when you see the superstructure. Such a foundation is the self. It is referred to as transcendental. Different from the word transcendent. Transcendental. It is the transcendental a priori of our experience. It is that which is the basis of all our experience. Cognitive experience, conative experience, affective experience. We have got only three kinds of experience. We have got three faculties. Cognition, conation and affection. Affection is feeling and all that one. Only these three. All our activities can be brought under these three. Cognitive, affective. Affective means having feelings and emotions. And conative, nothing more. Conative, C-O-N-A-T-I-V-E. Willing, volition. Knowing, feeling and willing. Anything more? All of them can be brought under these three. In the West, during the medieval period, they referred to it as the three faculties. Scholastic philosophers referred to these three as three faculties: cognitive faculty, affective faculty, and conative faculty. Knowing faculty, feeling faculty, and it is one mind, we say, that functions in all the ways. Am I right? Do you follow me? So how do you characterize this consciousness, this Swarupa Chaitanya? Is the basis of everything I do, whether I know it or not. Even to say that I don't know, I say I don't know. How do I know that I don't know? We have got once again a statement, Jnatatayava, Ajnatatayava, Sakshibhasyam. Even when I say I don't know, how do you say how do you don't know? Do you know when you say I don't know? Or you simply make a statement? This is an important issue in epistemology. I say I am ignorant. How do I say I am ignorant? We have formulated a dictum. Jnatatayava, ajnatatayava, sarvam sakshibhasyam. It is known to us. Otherwise, how do you make a statement, I don't know? You tell me. Do you know when you make such a statement, I don't know? If you know, what is it that helps you to know that you don't know? Don't think I am playing with words. If you play with the words, in the tradition, we will not have such a statement. We do have such a statement. And the Advaitin does not take anything for granted, just as the Nyaya will not take anything for granted. Even so that by the only thing is the Nyaya is aiming at precision and more precision as it grows, as it develops. But finally we can ask the Nyaya, please tell me in simple words what you want to convey. You will say that this is what I want to convey. Finally, Revati madam said, well, Vyapti, there is such a thing called Vyapti. She goes into all complications because the Navinaya language is like that. Transcendental a priori. Very deliberately used by Kant and others. Therefore, in the morning I said, normally when we say, how do you know anything? We say through the senses. Then a deeper understanding will tell you, not merely by the senses, by the mind. How is, all right, the sense, our things are known by the mind and the senses. Is the mind known or not known? Does it know itself? There are difficulties in saying it knows itself. It can't be. It can't divide itself into two and say, I am the knower, I am also the known. Impossible. So it has to be known by something else. What is that something else? Is it another mind? One mind cannot know another mind. Ultimately, you have to say it is known by the self or consciousness. It is a consciousness that gives you knowledge of your own mental states. That is the final position. So, whenever we know anything, ordinarily we say that we know, how do you know the tree? I say I am able to see the tree. If I am able to feel the fragrance of the tree or the leaves in the tree or the flower of the tree, how do you know that? Well, through the appropriate sense organ. Ordinarily, this is, we say, I don't say that I know by consciousness. It will be a little pedantic, though it is true. I will not tell my child, when she asks some question, grandchild, I will not say that you know it through consciousness. Tata, what do you mean by consciousness? I say you know it by the mind. Apply, see with the help of the mind, with the help of the senses. But ultimately, it is that position I said that one. Well, if you ask me to formulate the principles on the basis of which you are talking about the three levels of reality, I say that it is phenomenologically grounded, and then I take the advantage of this study, the 4th chapter and the 3rd section in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Shankara's commentary, and also I am able to see something else in phenomenology, and therefore I say that it is through consciousness something is affirmed. It is through consciousness something is denied. Not directly. Where the medium is required, certainly the medium. But ultimately, how is the medium? Supposing you ask the question, how is that medium known? Does it know by itself? Or does it seek the help of something else? Yes, it seeks the help of something else. That is consciousness. So when I say that consciousness is the transcendental a priori, now I say that one. Or when I said in the morning, it is the transcendent, it is consciousness whose evidence is apodictic, certain. So when it affirms anything, it is certain. When it denies anything, it is certain. But its affirmation and denial is made depending upon the context through the appropriate medium, maybe through the senses, maybe through the mind. And when you have to make a statement about the mind, not through the senses themselves are dependent upon the mind. So how do you make any claim about your mind? Sometimes you say, I know my mind. What do you think? I assert my awareness of my own mind. How do I assert? If you challenge, I will repeatedly challenge and say, how do you know? How do you know my mind? I know my mind. How do I know my mind? Through consciousness. It is the ultimate revealing principle, which is not dependent on any aspect of experience. On the contrary, the entire experience, whatever it may be, at the waking level, at the dream level, at the deep sleep level, apart from these three, one cannot claim any kind of experience. Avasatraya. Any experience you say, even if you go to Indraloka, the problem is there. And Indra is included in the Jiva Goshti. Maybe he is more blessed than we. But he has got more severe problems than you and I have. That is what Puranas tell us. He too may be put in a jail. But we respect him. That is something different. Just as we respect people. I am fond of quoting Kannadasan, 2 lines. Yenda peravi aanal enna, bandam bandam da. Yenda kolam aanal enna, sondam sondam da. I look upon my servant woman as somebody, my relation. I am related to her. Yeppa theriyirudhe. Supposing the next door neighbor quarrels with my servant woman, beats her, anything, I will go and say, how did you do that one? It's my servant woman. I claim ownership. My servant woman. How did you do? You should have called me, you should have told me. Yenda piravi aanal enna, bandam bandam da. Yenda kolam aanal enna, sondam sondam da. You're all related to me. I'm related to you. Now, it is this principle that is asserted in the Advaita tradition, the role of consciousness, when Shankara makes the dichotomy. It is this principle that is made in phenomenology. I have given the supplement. I don't know whether you have the supplement. If you have the supplement, take page 10. Page 10. Shastri, you have it. This passage in indent. Supplement. Now I have a different color paper. Please read it very carefully when you go. Repeatedly you read. It's a wonderful dialogue between a modern philosopher, Western philosopher, and Adi Shankara. Page 10. Is it page 10 in your page? Okay. S is Shankara and P is that modern philosopher. Abbreviation I used. Now Shankara closes in page 10. I think in my one page 10, I believe the same page is given. This supplement. Shankara, yes, the last 3 or 4 lines I take. The final position that emerges from this is this. Have you located? The self or consciousness is the only knower. The self or consciousness is the only knower. And all else, starting from the mind and the things of the external world, have to be brought under the category of objects which are known. It is on the basis of this absolute distinction between 2 categories, Drik and Drisya, the knower and the known, that we have to begin our epistemology and metaphysics. Is there not any philosophical position or standpoint similar to the knower-known distinction, empowering the knower as of the very nature of consciousness? Acharya asked that question to the philosopher. And now the philosopher responds to the Acharya. Yes, Gurudev, we have a very interesting philosophical movement known as phenomenology, which views consciousness as the ultimate reality. That Swarupa Chaitanya, consciousness, it is viewed as the ultimate reality, and that it is consciousness which has got various functions. How does it come to have functions? Because it is involved in the empirical world. Who is responsible for its involvement? Through Maya. That he will not be able to say. We will be able to say because we have the tradition. But he conveys the same truth on the basis of his own reasoning. Phenomenological movement. Husserl. He has got various functions such as constituting, intending, locating, etc. Many functions consciousness does. Once it is involved through the medium of Maya, when it is associated with the upadhis. What are the upadhis for the consciousness? Mind is the upadhi, the senses are the upadhis, the body is the upadhi. Once you are conditioned by all these, you are involved. It is quite, he says, it is quite possible to compare the Advaita position with regard to Drik and Drisya with a phenomenological standpoint. The standpoint of the Husserlian phenomenology is surprisingly the same. In the words of Eukos, one of the recent writers on phenomenology, Garbage. That is the quotation. Read it. I read very slowly. From the phenomenological point of view, consciousness cannot be regarded as one mundane realm among others. It is not a part of our empirical reality. Mundane. Consciousness is not a part of our empirical reality. That's why I said it is a priori. It is a priori, prior to experience, prior to the empirical world. And it is also transcendental. And in their language, it is that which constitutes, which intends, which locates and does everything. Our consciousness does everything. Once it is with the upadhi, it allows the mind to play its part by providing enough light. It allows consciousness to play their part by providing light. Light is moved from one level to another level, from mind to the senses, from the senses to the body. Then things of the external world are illuminated. To whatever mundane realm an object belongs, this belongs to the mundane realm, the waking level. Suppose you take the dream object at the dream level. To whatever mundane realm an object belongs, it necessarily involves, implicates, and in this sense presupposes consciousness. No vritti jnana of any kind is possible in the absence of swarupa jnana. That swarupa jnana is what we call consciousness, what we call self, and it is referred to as transcendental a priori. I don't think that anybody will seriously ask the question, does this building have got any foundations? When you see the building, the foundation is automatically proved. It is a proof of everything, and it is as good as proof. I don't think that any child will ask the mother, is there any proof that I am born? No. Everything presupposes consciousness in our experience. To whatever mundane realm an object belongs, it necessarily involves, implicates, and in this sense presupposes consciousness, namely those acts through which the object in question appears. It appears before me, it disappears before me. And this appearance and disappearance, they are noted by this consciousness. But for that, I will not know that it is there. But for that, I will not know it is not there. Consciousness thus reveals itself. We say Swaprakasa, reveals itself as the universal domain or medium of presentation of all objects, a domain to which every mundane realm necessarily refers. Herein consists the privilege and the priority of consciousness. It has got a privilege and a priority. It's a privileged position, not requiring any proof, because it is the basis of all proof. The mundane nature of a realm purports its insertion as a part into the whole world, into the whole of the total reality. In this sense, mundane nature must not be ascribed to consciousness. Mundane nature, empirical nature of any kind cannot be ascribed to consciousness. That's why Kant said it is the transcendental a priori. It is the same slogan that the phenomenological movement says. It is the same idea that Advaita conveys. So, when I said that there are two principles, I repeat, whatever is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. Affirmed by consciousness in the appropriate context through the help of the mind, the senses, as the case may be, that is implied. What is affirmed by consciousness cannot be denied. What is denied by consciousness cannot be affirmed. Then we construct the metaphysical structure. We speak about objects which are pradibhasika, objects which are vyavaharika, object which is paramarthika. And in the case of the pradibhasika object, I said it is private. I have to add one more point which I did not add in the morning. It exists only when it is seen. Only that at that time it exists. And I cannot say it exists earlier or it exists later. It exists only when it is seen. It has got a peculiar kind of existence in which cognition and existence are coterminous. I can say it exists because I cognize that. Only when I cognize it, it exists. This is the case with regard to the rope snake. This is the case with regard to the dream line. Am I clear now? And it may be sometimes difficult for people who are not exposed to, in the West, idealistic tradition. In the West, we have got the idealistic tradition. We have got the phenomenological tradition. To a great extent, Berkeley came to that position but stopped at a particular point. We have idealistic tradition in India. The best idealistic tradition you can think of is that is presented by Advaita, Sankhya. So still you have got doubts? You feel free. This is we have an open house, and yeah. I hope that it has been done, but I can tell you very briefly.
It's often said that consciousness takes the form of the pop. This always is confusing to me as to what this means exactly. Like the form of, how does this?
How do you explain your cognition of any object? You tell me first. Let me see whether how far you have moved. You cognized an object, a chair or your pen or your desk. How do you explain your cognition?
Certain sense data.
All right. The senses function, you have the sense data.
Through the shuffle through the mind, all illumined by consciousness.
Okay.
But it seems like that it's often explained that consciousness somehow comes out
Now,
and takes the form of the object. It seems paradoxical.
I say that there is an object. The object, the sense data, well, the senses come into contact with the object, or the object comes into contact. I am not disputing that point now. There is a relation between the senses and the object. Is it not so? When I see this object, I am able to see it to my visual sense. There is some contact. It is not a physical contact. Some contact is there between my visual sense and the object. Without that contact, I cannot see this object. Of course, you must assume that there is light. Given the necessary conditions, that is always presupposed, given the necessary conditions, assuming that my visual sense is functioning properly, the object is also perceptible, not that it is perceived, but it should be perceptible. An imperceptible thing I cannot see, it is a perceptible object. There is no abstraction. These are the conditions taken for granted. There is no abstraction between my visual sense and the object. There is the contact between the two. I get some data. The data are interpreted by the mind. And the brain is functioning. That is not denied. And the mind, the brain, they are in close contact. How close it is, we do not know. It is left to the medical scientists and neurologists to tell us. Certain portion in the brain, well, that receives the data, it is passed on to the mind interprets it, and then can the mind by itself interpret it? That way it says no, because it is a material entity. Then the case, even this can know something. A material object, just because it is material, cannot know, cannot understand, cannot feel, nothing of the sort. Take the body, take a corpse. It is not a living one. It is not animated by the appropriate principle, and therefore it doesn't respond. Even so, the mind. The mind is a very good instrument, cognitive instrument, but it has to be helped by another factor, that is consciousness. In the absence of consciousness, how can you say that this object is such and such? You say it is a podium, it is made of wood. How do you say that one?
Consciousness is never altered by the context.
Huh?
Consciousness is never altered ultimately by any object.
Why? The consciousness functions through the mind.
It's just the mind that's altered. It's contents. But the consciousness itself never changes.
I don't follow still.
Does the consciousness, Chaitanya, ultimate consciousness, is never altered.
It's never?
Altered. Change.
Yeah, well, it never alters, it remains the same, but what is needed is the light, illumination.
So the modification happens in the manas.
Yeah, manas. How do you know that the manas is very mere modifications of the mind will not be anything used? It is illumined mind. It is the mind which is illumined by the light which undergoes modifications will be able to comprehend the object. It reaches the object. I don't dispute that question now, whether the object reaches the mind or the mind reaches. In the Advaita tradition, we say it is the mind that goes and reaches the object. That is not the issue now. That there is such a thing called the contact between the senses and the body and the object. That is given for granted. Necessary conditions for seeing this object are present. I mentioned all of them. And then, because in the given situation, I am able to see this object because of the functioning of both the mind and the senses. I take for granted the functioning of the brain. I don't bring in here. It does not matter whether the sense data come to the mind or the mind is able to go and comprehend the object. That is another issue, because there is the problem that is also discussed. In the case of the visual sense, yes, you can say that it goes there. The sound, it seems to come to my eardrum. This is discussed by Suryanarayan Sastri. The problem. The issue for our present discussion is the role of consciousness. Given the consciousness, the mind, the senses can function, can give you knowledge of the various things in the world. In the absence of that one, nothing is of any use. That is the main point at issue. That is the point insisted on by phenomenologists. It's a great tradition, Husserl. Not that Husserl studied Advaita or in the Indian tradition. Well, he has developed the whole thing. And prior to that, Kant, when he talked about the self as the transcendental a priori. Therefore, there is a great tradition elsewhere, and fortunately for our tradition, we have the support of the text. I admire Husserl and the tradition because in spite of the absence of the text, they are able to have that vision. Great vision. I quoted it in extensio. And the more I read phenomenology, the more I feel strong with regard to Advaita. And therefore, when I go elsewhere and then give a talk, I hold on to the position. I say, look here, and here the imaginary dialogue, read the imaginary dialogue. I introduce as hermeneutics. I introduce as deconstruction. Everything is available. And therefore, my repeated slogan, I am very conscious of what I say. My slogan is, the new in the old. In our old tradition, all that is new that you are talking about, including postmodernism, which challenges many of the ideas, deconstruction, phenomenology, existentialism. Particularly, on the one hand, I am enamored of Gadamer, on the other hand of Heidegger. He makes such a statement: the concealment of being is the unconcealment of the world. When it remains closed, you see the world. The unconcealment of the world is the concealment, is the unconcealment of Brahman, of being. We have such a verse in Tirumandiram. Marattai maraitadu mamadaya, parattai maraitadu palvadu. That is to say that when the reality is concealed, you see the manifested world. When the manifested world remains concealed, that is the realization of the reality. That is Advaita. That is Heidegger.